The town of Dry Creek had learned to mind its business, but on that afternoon, business came looking for everyone. The sun hung low, dust floating like smoke, when Clara stepped backward onto the boardwalk, her voice shaking. She said it softly at first, then louder as people slowed their horses and turned their heads. "Please, don't do that." Her hands were raised, palms out, as if she could stop fate with empty air. In front of her stood Jonah Hale, the rancher everyone trusted. He was the man who fixed fences after storms, who lent seed without asking for payment, who tipped his hat to widows and fed strays behind the saloon. No one expected him to be the center of a moment like this. Jonah's jaw was tight, his eyes fixed not on Clara but on the ground between them. A leather pouch lay open at his feet, papers fluttering in the breeze. Deeds. Signatures. Proof. The banker hovered nearby, sweating through his collar, whispering warnings Jonah ignored. Clara's husband had vanished weeks earlier, leaving debts that gnawed at the town like termites. Everyone assumed Jonah would do what he always did, smooth things over, take a loss, keep the peace. Clara believed it too. That was why her plea sounded so sure, like she was reminding him who he was. The crowd thickened. Boots scraped. A child tugged at his mother's skirt. Jonah finally looked up, and the kindness people knew was there, but it was layered under something harder. He spoke calmly, which made it worse. He said the land had been sold twice, forged signatures uncovered, lies stacked on lies. He said he had tried to settle it quietly, but silence had only fed the problem. He said the town deserved the truth. Clara shook her head, tears streaking dust on her cheeks. She begged him to wait, to think of her children, to think of mercy. The word mercy moved through the crowd like a prayer. Jonah reached into his coat and pulled out a folded letter. He read from it, not loudly, but clearly, naming names, dates, and a betrayal that tied the banker, Clara's husband, and half the town council together. Gasps rippled. The banker lunged to stop him, but Jonah stepped aside, never raising his voice. He finished reading and let the paper fall. Then he did the thing Clara had asked him not to do. He handed the deeds to the sheriff, along with the letter, and said he was pressing charges. The law would take its course. No more favors. No more shadows. The shock wasn't noise. It was silence. People stared at Jonah as if he'd struck the ground and split it open. He had chosen the truth over comfort, justice over reputation. Clara sank to her knees, not because she had lost everything, but because she realized the town had. The image of Jonah as the man who always bent had shattered. He turned away, walked past the saloon, and mounted his horse. As he rode out, the whisper followed him, not anger or praise, but disbelief. The rancher had done it anyway. Night came heavy, and Dry Creek couldn't sleep. Lamps burned late as doors closed and reopened with new worries. The banker was taken into custody before dawn, his protests thin as paper. The councilmen named in the letter resigned one by one, claiming illness, travel, anything but guilt. By morning, the town was quieter than it had ever been, like it was holding its breath. Jonah returned at first light, not to gloat, but to finish chores he had neglected. He watered his horses, mended a gate, and waited. Clara found him by the creek. She looked smaller without the crowd, grief folding her inward. She said she hated him, then said she didn't know who to hate. Jonah listened. He didn't defend himself. He told her he had arranged for the children to stay with family until things settled, that the house would not be seized, that he would testify to keep them safe. He said he knew mercy and justice weren't enemies, but sometimes they had to walk different roads. Clara stared at the water until her anger thinned into exhaustion. She didn't forgive him. She thanked him anyway. Word spread that Jonah had refused to buy any land tied to the fraud, even though it would have made him richer than any rancher for miles. He hired men who had been laid off when the council fell apart, paid fair wages, and demanded honest books. Some folks said he had ruined Dry Creek. Others said he had saved it from rot. The truth sat somewhere in between, uncomfortable and necessary. The town had to learn how to live without shortcuts. Weeks later, a meeting was called in the open air. No speeches, no banners. Just people standing in a circle, talking about what they wanted Dry Creek to be. Jonah stood at the edge, hat in hand, not leading, not hiding. When someone asked him why he hadn't walked away and let the mess collapse on its own, he answered simply. Because someone asked me not to do it, and I knew then it had to be done. The words settled like dust after rain. The shock didn't fade quickly. It changed shape. It became resolve in some, resentment in others. But the town moved forward, step by careful step. Children laughed again on the boardwalk. The saloon hired a new keeper who kept clean books. Clara opened a small store with help she never expected. Jonah rode the fence lines at dusk, the sky wide and forgiving. He had lost the comfort of being loved by all, but he had kept something rarer. The town had learned that kindness without courage was a fragile thing, and courage, once shown, could teach a whole place how to stand.